Hey everyone, today we're going to be talking about the medium motor. So the medium motor is a very important part of EV3 Mindstorms, but it's actually significantly more simple than the large motor. And the reason for this is, whereas the large motor has two blocks, move steering and move tank, the medium motor only has one block. And the reason for this is because, if you think about it, the purpose of the medium motor is simply to move arms and other kind of attachments like that. So in general, using a medium motor for a wheel would be very ill-advised, because if you look at the medium motor itself, it's a lot smaller than the large motor, it's lighter, and in general, it's definitely not good to use it for wheels. That's typically reserved for the more heavy-duty large motors. But if you're using it for an arm and other kind of rotation-based extensions, it's perfect for that. And this is what we're going to be using the medium motor for. So if you guys have a robot like mine, which I'll link in the video, it has an arm that's attached to a medium motor, and currently I'm moving it up and down, and it only rotates about 90 to 120 degrees, so it doesn't rotate the entire 360 degrees. So the big thing about the medium motor is that you have to pay very close attention to the amount of rotations it takes. So currently, and if you look at the block over here, it has the same exact parameters as the large motor blocks, like move tank and move steering, in the sense that right over here you have on for rotations by default, and then you have on for degrees, on for seconds, on and off, which are all very similar. And then over here you have the power, which controls how fast the motor is going to be using. And then we have the amount of rotations, which we can always change to degrees, and then that would change it to the amount of degrees. For now, we're just going to stick with rotations. So the big issue with this is that if you have a robot like mine, I'm just going to run the program right now. And what the robot did is the arm moved from a down starting position to an up starting position. But if I try to move the arm at all, it won't budge. And the reasoning for this is because when the arm moves from the down position to the up position, it doesn't go a full rotation on the medium motor. As a matter of fact, it only goes about 0.25 rotations. So when I set this to one rotation and I run the program, the arm is just going to be stuck. It's not going to move at all. So as a result, if you have a robot like mine, and if you're just using the medium motor in general, pay very close attention to the amount of rotations, because it might not be one rotation, it might be more than one rotation, but yeah. So this problem can be easily fixed if I change this to 0.25 rotations. And by doing this, and I'm going to set the arm to the down position, by doing this, it's only going to do a quarter of one rotation, which is also 90 degrees. And when I run this, the arm goes up just about 90 degrees, or a quarter of a rotation, but it doesn't get stuck. So just be cautious of how many rotations. And then also, if I change this to degrees, as I mentioned before, and then use 90 degrees, and run this program, the same thing will happen. So just know that you can always convert from rotations to degrees and vice versa. Alright, so I mentioned moving the arm from the downwards position to the upwards position. Now, what if you want to do it in reverse? What if you want to start it from the upward position and move it to the downwards position? How do you think you would accomplish that? Alright, so there are two ways to accomplish this, and I went over this briefly in the large motor video, but one method would be to change the power to negative and keep the rotations as positive, and the other method would be to keep the power as positive and then change the rotations to negative. So we'll try the first method. So if we set this to negative 50 power, and one rotation, that'll mean the robot will go in the other direction, or the robot's arm will travel in the other direction for one rotation. And if we run this, make sure that the arm is in the upward position, because if it's in the downward position, the the robot or the arm's going to get stuck. But I'll try running this, and it'll just go downwards. Oh yeah, sorry. I had to make sure that was on 0.25. Alright, and then the other way, if you may have guessed, is to simply change the rotations to negative. Since you're doing negative rotations, that's kind of the equivalent of just moving the arm downwards. And if I run this, I'll get the same effect. Alright, so that's about it. Just one more thing regarding the medium motor. The power does not directly correspond to the amount of rotations. So I can set this to 10 power, and it'll still have the same effect as 100 power, in the sense that it'll start and end in the exact same location. It just goes at a slower speed. So that's the really important thing to know about power. Power does not correspond to the amount of rotations it'll take. It only just means how fast it'll go. So power and rotations, or degrees, or seconds, or whatever you're using, are totally different from one another. So just going back to the move tank block right here, if I set the power to 100 on both of them, and I do it for 10 rotations, doing this is the exact same as setting this to setting both wheels to 10 power and going for 10 rotations. Just because it'll start and end up in the same location. Doing this will take significantly more time than going at 100 power. So just keep that in mind. For most purposes, you're going to want to go, somewhere around 75 power in general. But you can always change that, and it doesn't necessarily matter. But there are going to be certain cases in which you need to go at a certain power and etc. So yeah, alright. So, one program that I want you guys to do, just to recap, is to do this. So start by having the arm in the downwards position, move it forward or move it upward, and then move it downward. And make sure that when it goes downward, it's in the exact same position that it was when it first went up. Alright, so hopefully you guys had a chance to work on that. So here's the solution. So I mentioned the arm should be in the downward position, meaning that first it's going to have to go upward, meaning that the power and rotations is positive. And as usual, set this to 0.25 power, or rotations. The power does not matter in this case. If you want to run this program, you'll see that the arm moves upward. And now we're going to want it to go downwards and then end up in the exact same location that it started in. So to do this, all we need to do is just kind of reverse our first block. And as I mentioned before, just make sure that this is 0.25 because that'll make sure it ends up in the exact same location. And then, as I mentioned, you can make either the power or the rotations negative. Here, I'm just going to make the power negative. And if we run this program, you will see that the robot's arm moves up and down. And you can do this as many times as you want. So for the challenge, I'm going to challenge you guys to try and pick up a small item with the robot's arm. So this might be tough, but kind of use your imagination here a little bit, because this is what we're going to be, or a lot of the things that we're going to be using the medium motor for are picking up items and stuff like that. So try your best. I've had this work before with a small item like a pencil or something, but see how that goes. And in the meantime, I'll see you guys in the next lesson.